Hi, so this is month 9 and this is the cutting video. And this month you're probably going to shoot me when you see how many 3/8 and 5/8 inch squares. So when you're having to cut the eighths cuttings, it's real important to be as accurate as possible. Now I did want to show you in the instructions this month, you will see that some of the squares on here have diagonal lines. When you see that, after you cut the square, you are going to cut from point to point to create triangles. So that's how that is indicated, which ones you need to cut into triangles. Okay, other than that, this is pretty accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and show you quickly how to cut this. So we're going to start with our light colored fabric, and I'm just going to go right down the line. Of course, the first thing I always do is I just get a clean cut so that I know that's straight. Then I turn it around, and when you see that you have 1.5, 1.5, that first number, the first thing you want to do is just cut that size strip. So I need a 1.5. I'm going to switch to my half side ruler, and I need a 1.5 inch strip, and my next one is 1.5. And I'm just making sure right now that this line is right on the edge. 1.5. Then I need I need two 2 3/8 inch strips that will cut each into 2 3/8 inch. Now, when you're doing eighths, when you look at your ruler, if I go 1, 2, and then I count 3 tick marks over, that's the 3/8, because these are 1/8 inch markings. So I'm going to find those and line as many of them as I can right up on the edge to make sure, there we go, that we are nice and straight and have 2 3/8 inches. So I'm going to cut this one. And then I'm going to cut another one. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I see it. I see it. It's all lined up. And this is extra. I'll toss it down there. Now, to cut the 2 3/8 inch squares, I am going to, now I'm lining up and looking at the line here is straight. My 3/8 inch marks are across the top because those have already been cut to size. And I'm going to clean cut the edge. Now I'm going to get my square ruler, because this makes cutting the 1/8 inch much easier. Because you look here, if I start at the 2 where the 2 intersection is, I have 1, 2, and I come down 3 little corner marks. So I come down to the third one, and you always want to do this first and put the corner mark on there, and then you can rotate your ruler a little bit to make sure the lines are all on the edges, which they are. So now I know I have a 2 3/8 inch square, and I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to cut another one. So the first thing I always do is go for the corner mark. Then I slide up and do whatever I need to do to line that up, and I'm going to cut that. Okay? Now these do need to be cut on the diagonal, and what we mean by that is that you're going to take your ruler and make sure it's going through both points, and then you're going to cut that in half, and now I have triangles. Okay? So let me do that again real quickly. Corner, corner. Now the formula for coming up with these triangles is not a pretty formula, so we use an online calculator, but it's important to know that there's some rounding involved, so they may not be exact, but they're going to be very close, and when you get done with the block, sewing them onto the block, you'll have an opportunity to trim them down. So that's, and I'm not going to go through because this is a pretty long cutting. So you're going to do exactly the same thing here, so you end up with 8 of these triangles. Now if we go back to our 1.5 inch pieces, again I'm going to clean cut the edge. And the first one, we needed a 1.5 by 3.5. Okay, so find my 3.5, line that up, and then this is extra. Okay, And I would save it because you can get a 1.5 inch square out of there. And then we need two 1.5 inch squares. So again, I'm going to line it up and clean cut that and find my 1.5 little tick mark, or actually this is a nice black mark corner, and do 1 and then do 2. And that is how we cut the first color. So you're going to have 4 2 3/8 inch squares that you cut on the diagonal. You'll have 2 1.5 inch squares, and you'll have 1 1.5 by 3.5. And that's going to be your color number 1. Okay. Color number 2 is going to be in the Allison glass, it's the pink. And now we're going to cut this. We need 4 2 5/8 inch squares. We need 4 2 inch squares, and we need 2 1.5 by 3.5. So again, the first thing we're going to do is cut our pieces, the strips the size they need to be, and then we'll go subcut them. And I'm going to, again, clean cut this edge, this. And so then I'm going to find my 2 5/8. So that's going to be the tick mark right past the half. So there we go, that's 2 5/8, and I'm going to do a strip. And I'm going to do again 2 5/8. So I'm looking for my 2, and I see the half, and then I'm going to go to the 1 tick mark past it. That's 2 5/8. Now I need 2 2 inch pieces. There's 1. And then I'm just making sure we're straight here. There's 2. And then I'm going to need a 1.5 inch piece. Okay. Now you're going to have more fabric than this. When I cut my pieces to show you, I cut this a 1/2 inch short, but it's enough. I can squeeze it out, but yours will have a lot more extra that's there. Okay. So let's now look at doing the 2 5/8 inch squares. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. I am going to slide this down, and I'm going to make sure I've got everything bottom and top lined up, and clean cut the edge so I can make it nice and square. And then we're going to come back to our square ruler. And this time I'm going to find my 2, and I'm going to go to the little corner just past the half, which is 5/8. And then again, what I'm doing is lining up the marks, the tick marks, and they're all lined up so I'm nice and square. And then I'm going to do another one. And I don't like to stack these when I cut them because they need to be accurate. So if you stack them, you could get one off from the other. So I always cut them independently. Okay? Now you're going to do exactly the same thing with this strip. So you'll have 4 2 5/8. Now I'm just going to point this out because I made this mistake a minute ago. There are no diagonal lines on these. So you don't cut these on the diagonal. I did and had to start over. Okay, so that's the 2 5/8. Then you've got your 4 2 inch. You're going to need 4 2 inch pieces, and this I will stack because 2 inches is pretty easy to cut. And I'm going to clean cut my edge. Let me get that down and make sure it's straight top and bottom. And now again, I've got a really nice line for 2 by 2. There's 1, and there's 2, and this ends up being extra. So you have your 4 2 inch squares, and then you need 2 1.5 by 3.5. And again, we know. And the thing about when you see the 1.5 by 3.5, it's going to be strip pieced, and it really only needs to be 1.5 by 3. But we add a little extra so that we can clean cut when we're done. So don't stress if you're, slightly shorter, it's real close, because it really only needs to be 3 inches. So I've got my 1.5, 3.5, and it looks like I'm going to be fine here, even though I cut it short. And there you go there. So as a reminder, you're going to cut 4 2 5/8 inch squares. They'll get 2 more out of there. 4 2-inch squares and 2 1.5 by 3.5. And you're going to stack those. And I'm going to put those up here on my fabric so I know where they are. Okay. Number 2, or print 2, fabric number 3. Very similar to what we've been doing. I am going to cut our, do a clean cut on one side. Again, you always need a straight edge to start measuring from. Now this one, I need 2 3 7/8 inch squares. So a 3 7/8 is 1/8 shy of 4. So if you look for your 4 on your ruler and go back 1 tick mark, you will be at 3 7/8. And it seems big with everything else we've been cutting, but we're going to cut that. And then we need 4 2 3/8. So again, I'm going to, did I do that right? I may have done that wrong because I had my ruler backwards. So we need to do 2 3/8, 1 2 3 from the 2. Get it all lined up. If you can't get all the tick marks to line up, your edge may no longer be straight and you may need to go recut it. But that one looks good. Okay. Now, I am going to just keep going with this one, and I'm going to clean cut this edge. And then we're going to take the square ruler, and you've seen me do this before, but I'll do a couple of them real quickly. I need these to be 2 3/8, so I'm looking for the 2, and I'm looking for that 3rd corner mark down. Make sure these are lined up, these are lined up. It's got to go a little higher. And then cut that. And you're going to keep doing that for 4 of them, and you have enough in this strip to get all 4. Okay, so we'll keep doing that. And then this is the 2 7/8 inch. And again, we want to clean cut this edge. Make sure I'm lined up. And I think I may have, because I was on the wrong side of my ruler, this may not be big enough, but we will see. So it should be the 4 less 1. It's 3. Sorry. 3 7/8, right? Or 5.
That's what you said.
3 7/8. 1 2 3. It's 1 tick mark less than 4, which is right here. So I actually cut it too big, which is a good thing, right?
Yes.
Better too big than too small, unless you run out of fabric. So I can just do this, and I can do this, and I have the square I need. Okay, so if I do 3 7/8, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there. I am going to, it's not quite square enough. I am going to recut this so that I have 2 edges that are square. And sometimes that happens, and so don't be afraid to trim a little bit if you need to. 3 7/8. That is much better. I can get all my lines lined up now. So you can see cutting 1/8 inch cuttings can take some time. Okay, so there's that one. Now, we do have to cut, and I should have shown you that too, all of these are going to be cut on one diagonal. So I stacked them, and I did that. And there you have those. You need 4 of those, and you will need 8 of these. And I only cut 2 of them, but I'll go ahead and cut it. There you go. Okay. Now, don't forget, at the bottom of the 3 7/8, we had some extra fabric, and we need a 1.5 inch square. So just take that and find your 1.5 And it should line right up in a corner, and go ahead and cut that. And now you'll have your 1.5 inch square. Okay, so that is color number 3, print 2. And the last one we have, and I would normally save the bigger scraps, but I throw out all the little ones. And the last one we have, let me put these up in the good pile. The last one we have, we need 4, guess what, 2 3/8 inch squares. So we are going to take, and I'm going to clean cut this edge, and I'm going to measure over 2 3/8 and cut the strips first. Again, make sure you can get them all lined up. There we go. And I'm going to cut one more, and then I'm going to cut them into squares. And then we're going to cut those all on one diagonal. I'll cut one set so you can see, and then we'll have everything cut. The cutting in this takes probably as long as the piecing, because we're trying to cut, we have to cut all these 1/8 inch pieces. But anytime you're working with triangles, you're going to have 1/8 inch. So we're cutting these in 2 3/8. So again, find that corner mark on your ruler, get it lined up, and that needs to go up just a little bit. And there's 1, and 1, 2, 3, 3, 3. For some reason I'm a little tall here. It may be the underneath piece, but I'm going to trim it. And then you're going to cut on one diagonal. You know, for triangles. Okay, so with all of that you just watched, hopefully you're not exhausted like I am, but that is what the cutting is this month. Mostly you're going to cut lots of 3/8, 5/8, and 7/8, and you're going to cut lots of triangles. So take your time, make sure you understand your ruler and what these little corner marks are so you can count down and use. This is why we encouraged you to purchase a bias square ruler, because this is what makes cutting the 1/8 inches much more possible. Okay, so that's what I have in the cutting, and the next video will be piecing.